everyone. Welcome to Tales from the Albright. Today we are here with Brianna.
Hello.
It's our second video podcast, so that's very exciting. And today we have a book discussion for you of The Secret Service of Tea and Trees
By India Holton.
Okay, so first things, do you want to introduce yourself since we are now on the YouTube?
Oh yes, on the YouTube. Hello, I'm Brianna Semino. I am the circulation manager here at the Albright Memorial Library. I am a big book nerd. I love mystery. I've been delving into fantasy. Alyssa and I both love all things British, so that informs a lot of our book choices, but I'm excited to be able to do a lot of our book discussions with Alyssa.
Yes. And we have book recommendations here that Brianna kindly brought up from circulation.
I'll get to chat about those at some point.
Yes. So first things first, how did you like the book?
I thought it was really fun. Like there was a lot of interesting whimsy in addition to the fantasy adventure plot and the romance. So it felt like a true genre blend where we got a little bit of everything, and I thought it made it really fun.
Yeah, it felt very light.
Yeah.
I wish it had a bit more depth to it, but it felt very light and whimsical and kind of like something you would pick up if you needed a cozier read.
Yes. It was a nice, entertaining read that wasn't too, they hinted at some heaviness, but there wasn't a lot of heavy in there.
Mm-hmm. This book is the third in the series.
Which we did not know going into this.
Yeah. No.
You figured that out.
More, but
I had no idea. I just saw this come in one of our new bins of items, and I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like such a good read. So I picked it up, and nowhere on the book does it say book 3. In my defense, you have to really search to find that it says book 3. It just says other titles by her. So I didn't know that, but it was also still really good to read as a standalone. It still worked.
Yes, and the other titles in the series are The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, The League of Gentlewomen Witches, and then this one. And then she also has a new title coming out this year.
Yes, I did see that, and I just put it on order this morning.
So we will have all of those.
Yes, indeed. And if you ever need, the earlier books of these as well are also on Libby. So you can read them on Libby as well.
Yes, and I feel like it's something where people are so scared to start series partway through. But we did it, and it was fine.
Yeah, it worked out. It's nice because they do that thing, because it's such a light read, where they introduce you to the characters newfold. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things that, funnily, as a series reader, I always found irritating, where you're on book 4 and they have to remind you of things. They'll be like, this character with this thing that happened in their past. And so here it was helpful because it meant that we really didn't feel like we were missing anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the book that I vividly remember doing that as a kid is the Harry Potter series. Because I feel like the first chapter of every Harry Potter book just explains all the rest of them.
Mm-hmm. It's let's catch you up in case you weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
Like the series recaps when you watch shows that are television dramas. Yeah.
Yeah, in the very beginning where it's previously on.
Yes.
And then it just goes through everything and you get the main gist, but you don't know the whole thing.
Yes. So I'm guessing that in the earlier books we do get to meet Alice and Daniel, who are our main characters here, and we get to see sort of their backstories. Mm-hmm. But the cool part is that this is really the beginning of their story together. So while the other 2 books I think set them up individually, this one is they're coming together in this adventure, and then the romance comes into play.
Yeah, I know I saw a review saying that they're kind of mentioned background characters in the other books. Oh, so cool. They're there, you kind of know them, you're kind of curious about them, but then you get the actual book about them. And I feel like that's something a lot of the romance genre does.
Yes, that's true. And I will say that's one of the things that I found in a lot of these other books too, is it's a cool strategy, in my opinion, to introduce characters that you get that interest in, and then you get to meet them more later, because then it gives each set of characters their own opportunity to shine and be the protagonist for their own book, which I like.
I think that's why a lot of romance authors go with families.
Yes.
So they'll make a family with 5 brothers, and then it goes through the stories of all of the brothers.
Yes.
And that sort of setup. So you get that, and it's a continuing thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so what did you feel about the overall sense of whimsy throughout the book?
I enjoyed it. I think it made it, because it plays to a lot of tropes, and she did it so artfully, I feel like it helped, because then the whimsy sort of made it more fun and interesting. Like, it wasn't just to a formula. This is how these sort of adventure stories go. It's always a good person that turns bad or whatever it may be. Like, you got a lot of that really fun silliness and a lot of the tropes of the genre they like poke fun at, which I found really entertaining.
Yeah, it had a humor to it.
Yes.
I think I would have liked it to be a bit more grounded, but I'm also just me. I don't read a ton of fantasy. I don't read a ton of like silly, whimsical type stories.
Yes.
So I like things a bit more grounded. But again, that's just a personality thing with me.
Well, and I think it depends on what you're in the mood to read. So this is something that's very good for someone who likes those lighter reads where you don't feel like you have to be like really in depth and serious about it. Whereas I know some of them where you're more involved with those characters, like even one of our earlier reads, Thursday Murder Club, has similar feel to this. Like, I feel like, but that was a little more serious as the story went on, the way we got to know the characters because we stuck with the same characters. And I liked the way that felt grounded in a way. This is more of a whimsy for the sake of fun and whimsy. And I like that that's a different, like, sort of, it's like having a snack versus a meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I couldn't in my brain kind of ground it in what era it was supposed to be in. So that confused me often. I think it's supposed to be like Regency, like Victorian, like somewhere in that 1800s realm, but I could never like get a grasp on it.
Yeah, because then some of the technology and references they made felt more like early to mid 1900s almost to me. So yeah, I couldn't get a total sense, but I feel like that's often the case with these sort of books is that they do that on purpose. Like they obscure, but that's also why I will argue that For All This Is a Genre Blend where we've got some adventure and fantasy and romance. And technically, I believe one of the subjects is historical fiction. But to me, this isn't technically historical fiction because you don't actually get any clear place and time. We get much broader senses of them. But like, I know one of the things they teach you in librarian school is that historical fiction has very clear senses of like history and place and setting and time. And we don't get that here. So it's more of like a secondary device to sort of add some flavor, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you wanted to point out the chapter titles and chapter headings in the book.
Yes.
So the Secret Service of Tea and Treason does do the historical book thing where it lists off kind of the major topics of the chapter at the very beginning. This was a common trope in early books in the 1800s. I know you tend to see it in, I don't know, I read a lot of like biographies of the Marquis de Lafayette for funsies that were written in like the 1830, no, more like 1890s. And they all do the same thing where it's like crossing the river, going to Indianapolis, like just it lists out what the things are. And India Holton does that in this book.
Yes. And I feel like they're really fun the way that she does them. So for instance, chapter 18 has How Not to Open a Door, A Literary Encounter, Daniel's Patience Goes Up in Flames, A Bucket of Cold Water, Not Strictly Ballroom, and An Immovable Object. So it's one of those interesting things to me where she hints at a lot of the plot in each chapter, but she doesn't tell you what happens. Like, it reminded me, I hope I'm not lying, I should have checked, but I think the one that I'm thinking of is like Lady Audley's Secret. It was something that was like a mid-1800s piece that I read where the last chapter quite literally said, she's vindicated and freed, or like something like that, where I was like, oh my gosh, it told me what was going to happen before it happened.
Yeah.
And that was just the way they did it, but I like that this sort of plays on that strategy. Doesn't quite spoil it, like more like teasers it.
Yeah, I feel like it has a bit more like wordplay.
Yes, definitely. Wordplay is one of, I would say, my key descriptors for this novel.
Yes.
Definitely.
And speaking of that, there's a lot of quotes from other literary works in here, like Shakespeare and Frankenstein.
I love that. It was just so fun, just the way that she like works all of those in. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I think I saw the Frankenstein one, and I think I just wrote a note on, because I read the ebook. So I just typed in a note about how much I hate Victor.
Victor Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Like the character?
Yeah.
That's too funny. Yes.
I like hate him so much.
We should read Frankenstein now.
We should not read Frankenstein.
Don't want to share your grudges about Frankenstein.
Fine, we can read Frankenstein if you really want. Okay. Maybe. That might be something coming soon.
Let us know.
Yeah. I'm more of a Dracula person, but we all know this.
We do know this about you. I've never read Dracula.
We should read Dracula.
Uh-oh. I've done this to myself. Yes. But yeah, like I like any of this sort of, you know what I mean? I think it's fun. I like the illusion. I like the way that we worked in a lot of those pieces, especially because they're both readers. And that was one of my favorite of their like bonding moments, is how much they love books, and how I think the breaking point at the end where they're like trying to break them up, and the breaking point for our lead Alice, I think it's for Alice. Yeah, not Daniel. It's for Alice, is that they get rid of her books, and she's like, nope. Yeah. I no longer work for you. You can't get rid of my books. Yeah. Not happening. I'm done with you. And that was just really entertaining to me.
Yeah, I feel like the most relatable part of the book is anytime they were in a major social situation and they were like, I wish I was just at home reading my book. And I'm like, that's relatable.
Yes.
That's me.
Yes. Their characters were really fun that way. Yeah.
And speaking of their characterizations, Alice had kind of in a way reminded me of like Amelia Bedelia.
Yeah, that's fair.
With like the taking idioms very literally. Mm-hmm. What did you think about that?
I would agree. I think her character in that way, like it was sort of interesting in a way to sort of give her that, I don't know, like it made the whimsy stronger, I feel like, because she was so privy to the whimsy. And then it sort of balanced out nicely for their characters, because we get Daniel as this very like serious, like he's very direct. And we get that side of him, but then she has that sort of light, and it's like she thinks she's serious, but she's not because of that.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's a way to add humor without making it like slapstick funny, you know what I mean? And I like that about her. I thought it was fun. I thought it wasn't always totally believable, obviously.
Yeah.
But I feel like the lack of believability was part of the shtick, you know?
Yeah. No, it definitely felt that way. Like some of them, I was like, all right, let's get past this.
Yes.
Let's just move on.
Yes.
But some of them were entertaining.
Yes. Do you have in there, while we're talking about characters, the baby capitalized? Because that was one of my favorite little tidbits of it, was the way that the baby was like this character that was hysterical, and the way that everyone interacted with the baby. Like it was so, because the baby was Evangeline, right? Was that, or was that a different?
I think so.
Yes, that was, so it was one of the, I think, Pirates' kids. And it was just so funny the way that they did that. I loved that bit. That was funny.
So what did you think about all of the kind of support staff and like servants being agents of the same organization and kind of just fangirling over Alice and Bixby the entire time?
That was pretty funny. I mean, it was an interesting turn of events where at first you like, I don't know, it feels like they're fangirling, and then you find out that one of the agents is secretly like even better, and like is this great like, kind of like she's like a spy within the spy, sort of, which I thought was an interesting turn, because by that point they had come to accept that they were being fawned over, and it meant they didn't really suspect anything of her, I guess, that she was like going back to Aunt and like telling on them or whatever. So I thought it was interesting, if a little problematic, which was, it made it funny though, I feel like.
I feel like I don't understand how they got anything done, because everyone is so very obvious the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I almost felt like the plot to actually, like, stop the bomb, because the whole thing is that they're trying to stop somebody from killing Queen Victoria. And I felt like that was kind of like a secondary thing to this entire just romp through this whole pirate party.
Yeah, it was pretty great at the end not even at the end, somewhere in there where they're like, yeah, we didn't believe for a second that you guys were pirates. Like nothing about you makes sense as pirates. So I guess they just kind of, in their pirate way, were just playing along and having fun with it.
Yeah.
So I think you're right that it wasn't believable, but I feel often like things like this in books aren't. Like even when we read Thursday Murder Club, some of the ways that they like pretend to be certain people and do things, I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. It's like the suspended disbelief of fiction in a lot of ways.
I feel like sometimes it works better than others, though, because I
Yeah.
do frequently read books where I'm like, that would never happen. But it's fine because it makes sense within it. Where
Yes.
I felt like I just couldn't get a grasp on like what the actual like meaty part of the Secret Service of Teen Treason was at certain points of the
Oh
book.
yeah. Like I totally forgot about the whole bomb plot. Like I had no idea. Honestly, for half of it I was just like this is just a fun silly
Yeah.
romance where they're like falling in love as they just pretend to be pirates. Like that was all I could really get out of half of it, which is why it was funny when it like the mystery itself comes to a head and I was like, you know, I don't know. It wasn't the focus for me, I feel like. Yeah.
Speaking of the mystery, spoiler alert, this reveals the whole ending. Um,
I like that.
how did you feel about Snodgrass being the villain?
I thought it made sense in the way that this often happens, where like the bumbling, like intelligent but not socially aware person that nobody pays attention to or likes is ultimately the bad guy and like turns on them. Like I feel like that's a premise of a lot of stories like this. So I don't want to say I saw it coming because, like I said, I stopped paying attention to that side of things and was just watching them pretend to be pirates and be like, "Oh my God, he's so beautiful. Wait, I can't think about how beautiful he is." Like I wanted to think that I knew, but I don't know that I did. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it worked.
I felt kind of like I wanted it to be somebody completely else.
Yeah.
Because then I wanted him to have like the next book in the series that doesn't exist and have like a weird romance where he's like, I'm just undervalued all of the time and no one respects me. Because I think that would have been fun.
That would have been a really Snodgrass's romance book. That would have been a really interesting one.
It would be chaotic and I would have loved it, but
Yeah, that's funny.
that didn't happen.
What about him with the like the snitch, the girl who like tells on them? Just the two of them
It's
have
just
a
like
romance.
A romance, but like from the other side of like the villain side.
Yes, that does actually sound fun.
That would be so fun. And that's what I was really hoping for, but it didn't happen.
You should have written this, or you can write a fan fiction that's the next book in this series.
First of all, I can't write.
I believe in you. You can do it.
I could write academic history, and that's about it.
Maybe that's the way Snodgrass's love story is told. You don't know. You don't know. But yeah, I think that I like your point. I think that's really good. I think there's always that struggle with mystery where it's like it has to be a character you know. It can't be no one you've ever met because then that ruins the fact that you're supposed to be able to solve with them. So like it had to be someone we met, but everybody else we met was basically a pirate.
Yeah.
So like that would have been too obvious, you know? Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it was so chaotic. It literally could have been everyone.
It should have been the baby.
Yeah.
That would have been so good if they were just like, it was the baby all along. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay. That's our new ending for the book.
That's our ending.
The other thing I have here is kind of the hints of the super strict upbringing and like borderline abusive upbringing.
Yes.
That just somehow comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. I wonder, that's what makes me wonder if they lead into that in the first two books. Like if we see more of that, just the way that Aunt is sort of in a, like, because we learn that they're the bad guys by the end. They send them on this mission, but obviously then they are kind of the bad guys. And we're like, okay, well, the way that they treated, especially Alice when she was young, is like really harsh and really terrible. But also kind of fits with Victorian orphan concepts, I guess.
But at the same time, I feel like you have whimsy, whimsy, whimsy. Here's this awful random thing for 2 lines, whimsy, whimsy, whimsy. And I'm like, I kind of would like to have explored that a bit more.
Yes, yeah. I think that would have been interesting as sort of like a secondary plot line. That's why, I keep referencing it right now, but that's why the Thursday Murder Club, their 4th book is my favorite so far, because they address the concept of dementia in the middle of this silly book, but they do it so well because they sort of run it as an undercurrent to what's happening, where we still get to jump back and forth into that fun, like adventurous fun plot, but like every so often we step back into this more serious concept, and you get to have this really cool in-depth exploration of that. So it probably would have been a really cool way to sort of handle like Alice's backstory here, though I don't know if, because of the way that the story wanted to do it, I feel like it was more of a way just to be like, okay, well, these characters aren't just fun and light, but that's not the tone of our book, I guess. Yeah. But I agree with you.
And How did you find the romance in the book?
I mean, honestly, it was mostly just funny to me because from the beginning, when they're just like, "Oh my God, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," but like can't say anything, but it's like instantaneous. Like it's such that trope of like
Yeah.
love at first sight. And I don't know how I felt about it. I will say it grew on me. Like by the end, I was like, "This is really sweet," and I actually really like them together. Especially when they sort of delve into like their similarities and the way they both love books
Yes.
and love to sort of have their own time and like respect each other's intelligence and capabilities. Like they developed the romance pretty well throughout. So it went from at the beginning where I was like, oh my goodness, this is just ridiculous, to okay, I can kind of see this. I can ship this.
Yeah, I feel like it just, there was something where I was like, okay, this is fine, but it like wasn't great.
Yeah. They were both super socially awkward though.
Yeah.
So the problem is it them both just being awkward human beings as a pairing, or is it the way that their romance is created, sort of? Like,
I think it might just be like a combination of the two.
yeah, and it's part of why I would argue that this is more, like I already discounted historical fiction as not the main genre, but I would say for all that romance is a big part of it, I still think that the comedy side is probably the most
Yes.
dominant genre, where it's sort of
100%.
like comedy is the focal point in the form of whimsy. And then from there, we have romances next, and then the adventure plot, and then the historical side, like in
Yes.
order of priority. So I feel like that's why the romance isn't like perfectly developed, because we're still prioritizing the comedy. Whereas some of the other books I have to share, a lot of it is, it's more focused on the romance or the adventure plot premise, you know?
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you wish your house could fly?
I don't think I do, based on the things that happen to these houses when they fly. They're just like pieces flying off, and like I'm terrified my shutters won't stay on as is, just from us making sure we properly nailed them into the side of the house, let alone flying. Though it is a cool concept, and it reminds me of a lot of like, I don't know, the fun sort of like childlike, again with the whimsy, so like the fun childlike stories, like
Yeah.
Up. I don't know. Maybe that's the only example I could think of off the top of my head. But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the fun adventure sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I'm confused if they have like a house that stays on the ground and then the flying house, or
Yeah,
is the
is it
flying house
separate?
just
Is it like
their
a
house?
vacation home, or is it
Yeah.
is it their primary residence? And if so, what is the address of their
Or
primary
if-
residence?
Because they're pirates, does that take the place of ships in like how we think of pirates in the world? Like,
But isn't the premise that Daniel's on an actual ship at one point?
I think so. That's how I took it, but
Okay, but you never know.
you never know. It could have been a house.
That's true. It could have been a house ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a fun little element that just sort of added to that whimsy. I will say the mythologies, or well, I shouldn't say mythologies, the choices of magic interested me. So like we've talked about this before with fantasy, where you've got, there's werewolf magic, which is different from vampires, which is different from fairies, and like different from angels and demons. Like those are all different types of mythologies that normally have their own books. So like, for instance, when I read the Shadowhunters books, which is the YA Cassandra Clare series, I struggled at first because they put a bunch of them in.
Oh, 100%. Every single mythological or like legendary character are in those books.
Yes, literally. Like demons, vampires, werewolves, goblins, like they had
Angels.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like this felt somewhat like that to me, because it was, we have witches and we have pirates, and we have this society that interacts with the witches and the pirates, that has their own, like they're not magic or anything necessarily, but they like participate in that. So like there were a lot of tiers of different types. And it was a fun way, I feel like, of trying to do something different. Like, okay, we're not just going to do vampires and werewolves romance. We're going to do pirates and witches and like do that sort of thing. So that made it fun. But I feel like that's part of why it has to stay whimsical and light, because they can't ground it in anything very concrete right here. They're just like going for it.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, it had that like feel.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like I want to go back and read the first two books just to see if it gives a bit more sense of grounding that I was looking for in this one, because it is the third book.
That's
I mean, it's very much, you can read it on its own as a standalone. And I do recommend it because it is fun.
yeah.
But I feel like it probably helps to read the first two first.
Yes, I would agree.
And then if you're not sure if books are in a series, always just look online or ask one of your helpful librarians, and we'll be able to help you there.
We will do research for you, even if we didn't do it for ourselves,
Yeah.
apparently. Don't let Alyssa ask, what book do you want to read? Because I just go through the list of books I thought looked cool, and I don't do my research. I just go, I like this one, and you said you liked it too.
Yeah.
So that's my fault.
I just assumed you read the first two.
No, I see what comes in, and I go, I like that, and I want to read it.
Yeah, that was how I was when I was working like at Library Express, and I would just see all the books come in and just add to the hold, add to my to read list, and then it just gets out of control, and then it's having to narrow it down. And then you feel bad because you're not reading as quick as you want.
I know. I have too many going on right now. And since we have access to Libby and Hoopla, I will like listen to an audiobook on one of those platforms while reading a book, while also typically I'm reading two in physical form and one digitally. So it's like so many.
That's where I'm at right now.
That's me.
What books are you reading?
So just finished this one last week. I'm currently in the middle of reading the Throne of Glass series because one of our coworkers here, Sarah, shout out to Sarah, convinced me to read it, and it's very good. So I'm on like book 4 or 5 of 7 or 8 of those. And then I'm also reading a new nonfiction I found that we just got in called Slow Productivity. It seems really cool. Just started that, like it, for our other book club that we're doing. And then I'm listening to Katie Roberts' Neon God series because I thought those would be fun.
Yeah.
So that's on Hoopla, and I believe it's on Libby, but I'm doing it on Hoopla.
Yeah. I am listening to Rachel Hawkins' The Villa.
Oh, okay.
And then I am reading A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. I know the last name is Carr. It was one of those short novellas that appeared on my Instagram Reels, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And then, what else am I reading? Oh, Murder in Mesopotamia by Agatha Christie, because I'm an Agatha Christie person.
We have been rebuying and like getting copies of all of the most obscure Agatha Christie's, by the way, so we're going to have plenty of them here. Plenty. I've been buying a lot of British mysteries.
Have you been getting Mary Westmacott ones?
I'll have to look and see because
those are the romance ones that she wrote on the side that
have to look, 'cause I
are a
don't know if
bit
I saw
more
that.
autobiographical in terms of like her inspiration for it.
I think because I know I bought a lot of just her more obscure titles of the random mysteries that nobody had, but I'll have to take a look and see because I did those, and then we ordered a lot of so similar to this but without as much of the whimsy and romance. We do have a lot of it's called the British Crime Library, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
And it's a bunch of classics. Some of them are individual authors. So E.R. Lorac was one that a patron really liked and recommended. But then some are like murders on trains. It's just a bunch of British murder mysteries set on trains.
Yeah.
So like,
That's
you know,
fun, though.
like different from, you know, obviously the whimsy sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And would you like to talk about the books that you brought here today?
Okay. So I brought a couple of different sort of realms of recommendations based on the book we have here. So we have one that looked really interesting. It's called Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Lord. It is the first in a new mystery series and very similar to the one that we read here. It's set in like the 1800s in London. There is a lady who's our main character. She loses her fiance. She decides to like enjoy society, but then she basically finds out about that she has melancholia, which is one of those horrible illnesses for women in the day that was just like, probably you were just depressed.
Yeah, it's basically depression and anxiety.
Yes. And so she vows to like use her condition to like dig deeper, and she like goes into like the asylums and finding out about the way that the society is like treating all these women that have this condition. So it's
Kind
a very
of like Nellie Bly style.
yeah, it's like a very cool like lady that goes undercover and like is uncovering like mystery adventure. So not necessarily magic, but has a lot of those elements of that. And this is a mystery genre book. Then another one that I felt was very similar to this one is called A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Mayhem. I actually found it because the author, Manda Collins, is recommended as a read-alike author for India Holton. And it says basically it's about a newspaper columnist who's also a lady, so everyone does not think she should be writing these newspaper columns. It's too scandalous. And she gets involved with this inspector, and he's solving mysteries. And this is also set, this is in 1865. So he's solving all these mysteries, and she's getting involved in his crime scenes. And they start to be like, oh no, you can't be involved in my crime scene. And then, oh my gosh, but you're beautiful. So then they start to fall in love. But she like shows up when he's solving a murder. So it's like a fun sort of another one of those like romance murder mystery.
Is that
sort
a
of thing.
series?
So this is book 1 of a series. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm
sure it
pretty
was
sure.
a series.
Yep. I'm pretty sure there are a bunch of them. This is. I did look this up to make sure this was book 1 this time, because just in case.
We've learned our lesson.
Yes, we learned our lesson. So that's book 1. There are these handful that I found that are just sort of not quite as similar to what we read, but more of the period romance that's been coming out. So like we know a lot of these style of covers have been very popular, where it's like the illustrated covers.
Yeah, I
For
talked
anyone
about those
listening.
at the last
Oh yeah.
book
Yes.
discussion.
So like,
or podcast recording.
so we've got a lot of those in our collection now because it's been a lot more popular. There are some that are in like the Regency sort of time frame. So like this one is To Woo and To Wed by Martha Waters. So that one's like a sort of dating, not dating, widow romance sort of thing.
Also a series, I believe, right?
I think this one's brand new, so I'm not sure if there are any more of it yet. This one's also very new, which is Lady Charlotte Always Gets Her Man by Violet Marsh. Another of the fun, like, mismatched romance sort of things. So these are more straightforward romance, but I thought they were fun because they fit that sort of period as like a backdrop for it. And then just for something a little more off the wall, we also have The Little Old Lady Behaving Badly, which is, I believe, Swedish actually, but it fits more with like the Thursday Murder Club feel, where it's just like eclectic solving mysteries the way that we have these like British spies solving them. This is like older women solving mysteries. Very fun for like if you like more of the adventure romp sort of feel of this.
Oh, and India Holton is quoted on the front of Lady Charlotte Always Gets a Man.
Yes, I like
I just
that.
look. Oh, and To Woo and
my
To Wed.
I didn't even know that. I literally just went through the new section for these two and
I
found
just
them.
looked down and I saw the quotes on them.
So she's well known then. So, and then last but not least, had to throw this out there, that obviously we have Bridgerton. So for those of you who just like that, the romance and the Regency and those elements, and like we talked about at the beginning when we were talking about sort of family storytelling.
Yes.
So we have Bridgerton, the first book, which is told about the sister Daphne. That one was made into a Netflix adaptation a couple of years ago, and since then they've been adapting the show. It's been almost every year, I think it's come out.
Yeah,
it's pretty much yearly.
Pretty consistent,
Yes,
as
in
far
the
as I
spring.
can tell.
Yeah, because I think it was this time last year that the second season came out, which is based on The Viscount Who Loved Me. So this is told about one of the brothers. And then next month, we have coming out season 3, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is about another one of the brothers. So that one, it's going to be a 2-part release to the show. So the first part is May 16th, and then the second part is the middle of June. So they're doing like a double release.
Yeah.
But we have all of the books of the series. We have pretty much everything Julia Quinn has written because they are really popular. So if you really just liked this because you like British settings and romance and a little bit of that history, Bridgerton's another great one too. So if you're curious, or you already were a watcher of the show, we have the books. We have them available on Libby, I believe, and maybe even Hoopla. I'd have to check.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in any of those,
Try all of our resources.
yes. And then if you ever have questions, just give us a call and we'll be happy to help you find some more.
Yeah.
So these are just some fun reads that I found that I thought would be good for if you liked The Secret Service of Tea and Treason or want to read something like it.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining me today. Do you have any final thoughts?
My final thoughts are that I may not want a flying house, but I do love the baby that can wield weapons. That's my thoughts. But this was fun. And I enjoyed reading it with you.
It is very fun. Well, thank you all for watching or listening, depending on which version of this you are interacting with. If you have any questions, always feel free to email me at alony@albright.org. That is ALONEY@albright.org. Or feel free to call the library to put any of these books on hold at 570-348-3000. Thank you.